I'm Jessica Wilson, and you're listening to Making It Awkward. Welcome back. I really appreciated the feedback y'all gave about what you'd like to listen to. At the top of the list was eating disorders, and today I'll start talking about the field. I interviewed two Black eating disorder dietitians, Angela Goens and Whitney Trotter, both the founders of the annual virtual BIPOC Eating Disorder Conference. Whitney is the first Black dietitian I'd ever met, ever. Now, some people might think that this field and practice is more a niche market in healthcare and mental health. And honestly, I wouldn't disagree. In fact, I'd say that's by design. The energy I've seen people put into preserve the image of specifically anorexia as something that only afflicts thin white cis women is unmatched in any other field for any reason. In next week's episode, you'll see how this energy has defined this establishment's conversation about anorexia and how people are able to spin it in order to continue to prioritize those we're taught are in most need of our tending and care. You'll also hear how easy it is to dismiss lived experience in order to preserve the image of anorexia. But today you'll hear Whitney and Angela's experiences in the field. We'll take a quick break for me to clarify some things in the second half, specifically the eating disorder organization, iaedp. We'll talk about its certification program. You'll hear a bit about what it takes and how much money is required every year to be called an eating disorder expert. Angela is the owner of Rooted Nutrition Services. She's invested in removing barriers for people of color who are struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating patterns, so individuals can receive the quality and equitable treatment deserved. She provides individual nutrition counseling, peer or group supervision, support groups, and consultation services. Angela has experience working in various roles of intensive care for eating disorders, chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, and trauma. And then Dr. Whitney Trotter is a healthcare professional dedicated to trauma and inclusive well-being. As a registered dietitian and psychiatric nurse practitioner, Dr. Trotter has over a decade of experience working as a registered dietitian, serving communities such as the HIV/AIDS community, human trafficking, and in the eating disorder field. She's the former nutrition and nursing director of a residential PHP and IOP center. Dr. Trotter has been featured in a variety of media publications, including Essence, CNN, The Skim, and the New York Times. Here's the first half of my conversation with Whitney Trotter and Angela Goens. Let's jump into it and talk about how we all got connected. Whitney, I remember you calling me with your child in the car, picking her up from school, and you were trying not to swear.
I was driving down Walnut Grove. I can still visualize. That was 3 years ago, going on 4, because it was spring. So this spring, March, it'll be 4 years.
Correct. You were the first Black eating disorder dietitian I had met or talked to.
Oh, same. Yeah. I didn't know there was, because and what's interesting is I went to the AED conference 2019. Because I was working for a residential place and they paid for me to go to that conference. And I did not see any Black dietitians at the New York City Academy of Eating Disorder Conference.
Right.
I just want to highlight and emphasize New York City.
Sure. So, Whitney, you had called to get the supervision, and I think that was uniquely important because in this field, there are just so many things that our colleagues don't understand when it comes to Black clients, clients of color. For both of you, what's been your experience having Black clients with eating disorders in this field?
Well, I will say it has changed a lot over the years. I certainly, in my first few years, probably had maybe I could count on one hand how many clients of color I would have had in probably my first 5 years of doing eating disorder work. And they're memorable people to me for that reason, right? Like I really they hold special place in my heart for that reason alone, many other things. But I wanted to stay close with them in recovery and really be part of that process. And I should also preface that a lot of my career has been in various levels of care, so higher levels of care. So these clients in particular were in some pretty tough places, physically, emotionally, medically. And so to be able to follow them as they step down to levels of care and or going into outpatient was really nice. I mean, we definitely chose to stay together as long as we could. And I think that was important for them. Over the years, I would say I definitely have more clients. I only work in outpatient now, so it's also a little bit different. I don't really know what that would be like at a higher level of care at this point, but people wait a while to see me. I mean, I may be the only that I'm aware of in my area, and I'm in the Midwest, but the only Black dietitian in mental health space. So people will call me up from nearby states and cities and want to work with me. I also take insurance. So there's a different access piece there as well, or accessibility piece there, which is wonderful with also virtual world. So I don't want people to sit on the wait list as long as I have to keep them there sometimes. I offer other providers, but really if someone's request is to work with a Black dietitian with experience in this field, you're just not, I have no one else to send them to. Nowhere nearby. And then there's the whole piece of like, do they take insurance? Do they take their insurance? Do they take their diagnoses? Like there's so many questions to that. Sometimes people will wait because they want an entirely like Black and brown team, which is a little harder to find as well. But people will send clients my way for that reason as well, even if it's work that they can do in their future. Maybe they're doing a lot of the therapy and medication work at this time, but if they can add the dietitian in the future, but they just make sure that I'm aware that keep this person on my radar or on my wait list, that's possible as well. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's what it's definitely a challenge. And I think that people really know what they want or what they need in terms of what they've been missing in their care. When we talk about people who've been struggling for a while or been in and out of typical systems of ED care, and they're just not going to go back to that. And so some of the missing elements are absolutely diversity in their team and understanding of their intersectionalities and the, place they're in with their life and recovery. And that can only be found, or at least what's been missing for them, what's been found in, diversifying their team. And that often includes me. So I'm thankful and grateful to be a part of that. I'm not a great fit for everybody, but we certainly give it a try. And when there's not a lot of options, I do my best to really work with people.
I mean, I agree. Similar, like I've worked at various levels of care. I think it's definitely, there's a lot more pressure working with Black clients because, especially in the South, like I feel a little bit more protective on if they have to go to a higher level of care, like where can you send them? And specifically, like I see a lot of professional Black clients. And so they don't obviously want to go in the same city or state, right? And so it makes it that much harder. I also think there's I was meeting with this is like such a tangent. I was meeting with somebody today. I was doing supervision. I think there's this notion that a lot of Black clients and BIPOC clients need sliding scale. Or they can't, because somebody made the comment today about how they want to increase diversity with clients, but a lot of people can't afford my prices. I'm like, how much are you charging? Because all my people pay full price. Now, granted, I'm not charging a whole lot, but I think there's this notion that only poor Black people have eating disorders.
Or all Black people are poor.
Yes. How about that?
I'm like, that is not accurate. I think the issue is accessibility, yes, but again, we don't get the diagnoses. So if you're Angela taking insurance, you have to have a diagnosis to see somebody with insurance.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily this every Black person is poor and can't afford full prices. We have to have an accurate diagnosis to be able to get the help that we need, and we're not appropriately screened and given the diagnoses, or it's the wrong diagnoses.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for when I first opened up my practice, every single woman that was referred to me who was Black was diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And I'm like, right. You don't have binge eating disorder, boo. You got anorexia, okay? But because you live in a larger body, it's just it's the sale thing. It's it's just diagnoses that you're given because of fat phobia and anti-Blackness. So it's really frustrating. I mean, I see more now. I probably treat people of color, specifically Black people. The majority of the diagnoses that I treat, if we're talking about accurate diagnoses, are anorexia and bulimia. Mm-hmm. Now, I think if I was to guess, I think probably the number one undiagnosed eating disorder in young Black Americans, particularly boys, would probably be ARFID. And I do not think that is screened and diagnosed, particularly because they're I mean, especially in a city like Memphis, Black cities, it's hard to get an IEP. A lot of young Black boys like are labeled as bad if they have ADHD, sensory autism, and there's no screening whatsoever for neurodivergence or ARFID for specifically young Black boys. So I think we'll see probably the next 10 years, the more that we get Black clinicians trained, I think we'll see the increases. I think it's there. We just don't have that adequate representation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a lot of bias in the whole diagnosing process, which is what you're referring or alluding to, right? Like whatever other label gets slapped on people's chart at the time, it's not typically accurate. So, I mean, I have people who come or reach out or want to come to me to help sort of understand what's going on with their eating patterns or like their state of mind, their state of life at the time. Obviously, I can't diagnose, but we can like go over some of that, and I can send them to like my safe team of people that I feel like would be great therapists to connect to, and then come back and see me. But they're often surprised. Yeah. Or no one has ever told them that, you know, this is possibly what's going on, or I think this is actually what you're struggling with. So there's a lot of bias in that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, usually if you're a Black youth, you're usually getting labeled as defiant, disobedient, conduct disorder, and nobody's actually doing like a culturally responsive or appropriate assessment on you.
Speaking of both of us working in a higher level of care, Whitney, I probably can also think on one hand how many Black therapists, zero psychiatrists, zero medical doctors of color I ever worked with. Mm-hmm. I did used to have this amazing group, probably, I don't know, 8 years into my career, that I would meet with. Sort of, we didn't call it a consultation group at the time. We had a little special name for it, but it was all of us who were not white clinicians working in higher level of care. And there were very few of us, but none of them were Black dietitians or therapists. But there were other, you know, people of color that we all got together and met and talked about our stuff behind the scenes. They're still lovely people in my life, all of them still practicing, and most of them not in eating disorders. However, the representation and the staffing of those higher levels of care absolutely needs work. I mean, to this day, it's almost the same. I'm talking about like 10 years or more ago, and it's still like that.
But also, like, for the listeners out there who don't know, we both live in Black cities. Like, I live in a Black city. Memphis is 65% Black, 75% non-white. How do you have treatment facilities in a Black ass city and not a Black dietitian? Or I was only a Black dietitian. No Black therapists, no Black nurses. We finally got one. No Black psychiatrists, no Black nurse practitioners on staff. Like, how is that actually possible?
Easily. Like, there are terrible places for us to work. Both of you, I'm gonna let you speak to the environment there, and you both can share like why it's impossible to stay working there.
What's that song? Impossible, impossible. That's the theme song. That's what you need to play in the background when you ask that question. It's impossible to stay. It's like, I should probably bill them for the PTSD I acquired in the counseling. I think it's not only that, but it's like, I'll never forget one of the first Black clients I worked with when I came out of higher level care, and they were still there, but I was seeing them in outpatient, how they would dock you and write non-compliant or refuse food for that bland ass food that they served. Again, I live in the South. We have barbecue spaghetti. We eat coleslaw. We eat there was stuff on the menu that I could not even pronounce. I'm not eating goat cheese on nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, so why am I deemed non-compliant because I don't want a fruit salad with goat cheese? That's not what I eat. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's the thing. Like, and it can be said of all cultures. Like, I'm just like speaking to my Blackness and living in a Black barbecue city of like the food at these places. Like, and then if you don't eat, you get like, at our place, you had like 3 dislikes, or you would have to supplement. So now, if I don't like the bland, unseasoned food, I got to drink chalk. And this, and you know what I'm saying? At an eating disorder facility, like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No. And, you know, the bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder diagnoses that just get thrown around for Black people, Black women in particular, you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm so particular and careful on if somebody does have to, for medical stability, go, like, where I send them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm in a space that is unusually saturated with eating disorder care, like high level. There are states surrounding me that have no options for care, possibly outside of a few good outpatient providers. But I'm talking about residential partial IOP levels of care. Right now I could just list off 5 large treatment centers in this area, like within 50 miles of like where I live. So that is highly unusual or uncommon. And people came from very far. People would come from other states, and people would come because perhaps they were working in the field and didn't want to be seen in their area. I think you said that earlier too, Whitney. But yeah, it's sort of inexcusable to not have more diversity. And yet I agree to what you're saying as well, Jessica. It's sort of a setup for people to not stay very long.
Watching how my Black clients have been treated, and it may be similar to you all, just watching the trauma that they have to go through in eating disorder treatment, like already makes it like hard for me to work in the field. I've talked to clinicians at higher levels of care who have told to like literally like tone down their Blackness while there because they don't want to worry about them alienating any of the clients there. There's just a variety of reasons that there's already a lot of turnover, even among white people at eating disorder facilities. But, when our credibility is like how many years or how much time have you spent like working with eating disorder clients, and like we have been unable to because the environments are just so toxic, it's like this reinforcing of, we shouldn't be respected in the field because we don't have like enough experience. I don't know what you both think about that.
That lands for me for sure. I feel like I spent a lot of time sort of having to prove my ability, capability, knowledge, experience. Like it had to be spoken out loud. I wondered if it was me feeling like I had to like always, post up all the time and share this, but that wasn't the case. People were like, until I send a client to you, or let me just see what kind of work you do and where have you worked and how long have you worked there and where did you go to school? Like nobody asked me that. That's not a normal question. People don't ask you about passing your RD exam. Once you've done that, it's done. People don't ask you where you go to school. Once you've done that, it's done. Like you can check my resume, but like people don't walk around once you're in career land. People don't walk around asking you those things. And those would be common questions directed towards me often, and not clients. It was very cool to me. Clients could feel and understand that it was different, or that I was perhaps or hoping that I could be different for them. I'm sure it wasn't like, I have certainly made mistakes along the way and learned so many things. I mean, a lot of my teachers were white providers, right? So I had some unlearning to do. And I had some things to really work on myself over the years to be a better clinician. But in general, that was from professional folks I was working with, right? I'm in this role, I'm in this, lead or director position, and you're still questioning like how I got there. I didn't just land there. I certainly had some qualifications to come to this point in my career, but I did that for a long time. And I only feel now in my private practice, strangely, that I don't have to do that. Like that wasn't about my own trust in my own ability. Like I was fully capable and aware of like what I was qualified to do, but justifying it all the time to other people, that was ridiculous. I wasted a lot of time, right?
You almost feel like gaslit. Like you're just like, and I think that's, again, just going back to the certification, you get gaslit into thinking that you need the certification to be on the same level as white clinicians in our field. But I think that's the thing, like every field is like that, every niche. I think it's particularly worse in the ED field though, because we're saturated with whiteness.
Yes. I just wanted to add to that, Whitney, because I was smiling so hard because it is an interesting dynamic sometimes to be like, all right, you want to know? Well, let me just lay out for you all that I've done or all of these things. And I was just smiling like, you get to add doctor now too. It's like you a nurse, you a doctor, you all these things. And I can be like,
I should change my Zoom name.
Yeah, but it is surprising. I think the truth is, I believe that probably happens. It happens in every field. When it happens, I'm kind of like, go ahead, challenge me. Let me just tell you. Let me just go ahead and let you know all I've been doing these last how many years and what my qualifications are. It's just there's a little bit of a smile to that because it surprises people, and it's not anything special. But they were not thinking that was going to come out of my mouth. Right. Yeah. I'm no smarter or I haven't done more school than anybody else in the field. I'm not. That's not where the place I'm coming from. But you thought I really was just, way down here and me sharing that surprised you. And that makes me smile.
Angela, you remember that one time we met with somebody and they thought it was like this older, like very pristine white woman in the field who shall not be named, but she does like a lot of supervision. And she thought we just like popped up out of thin air. Like we were just like new. And you were like, no, I've been doing this for 20 years. I was like, yeah, I became a dietitian in 2011. She was like, oh my God, I just had never heard of either one of you. Yeah. And she was like, she was so like just shocked all that we had done,
Well, guess what? We're out here. We're doing good things in our neck of the woods. We don't have to be out there and loud and like, in my case, I would not have needed to be on social media. Like if I'm doing good work on the ground, that's all I care about. Like I don't need your approval or I don't need to be across 50 states. Now, again, the virtual world has changed that so much, and certainly insurance allowing for people to be in different states and people to find you if they want to pay out of pot, however that works. Like, yes, but in general, it doesn't mean we're not out here. It doesn't mean we don't know. We didn't even know each other, for instance, right? We've been brought together because of this, but there's still people doing great work in the field that are still unknown. And don't be surprised.
I want to be known though, because I'm trying to move to Atlanta and be on Married with Medicine and in my reality TV era. Or get a peach. I want a peach or Married to Medicine in Atlanta. Either show will work. So Bravo. Yes. I hope your podcast hit the Bravo network, Jessica, so they can hire me.
Everybody got that? All right. Yeah. That'll be the next petition out there.
Wait, Bravo.
A girl can dream.
Yeah.
In the second part of the podcast, we'll talk about iaedp, the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals. The organization created a certifying process to label some clinicians as experts if they pay the $8,400 a year to be one. iaedp states its mission is to, quote, promote a high level of professionalism among practitioners who treat those suffering from eating disorders by promoting ethical and professional standards, offering education and training in the field, certifying those who have met prescribed requirements, promoting public and professional awareness of eating disorders, and assisting in prevention efforts, end quote. So iaedp offers different tracks for health professionals. In order to become an expert myself, I need to complete their 11 workshops and pay thousands of dollars. I scanned the workshop topics and found that just one of them teaches us how to support people who don't fit the stereotypes of who gets an eating disorder. Just one of them. It's the last workshop, of course. It's titled Special Considerations, and in the 10 topics listed for that one webinar, the last is cultural considerations. That's it. Among the list that includes pregnancy, autism, and athletes, 10% of that workshop is for, quote, cultural considerations. Cool. That's really all people need, right? You'll hear that iaedp used to offer what Whitney and Angela referred to as being grandfathered into the certification. The org used to offer what they called equivalents. Basically, if iaedp thought you had contributed enough to the field, then you could just have the certification without this curriculum. They decided. This caveat ended, and now everyone needs the curriculum. The certification also requires that applicants pay for hours hours and hours of paid supervision. As far as we've been told, there aren't any Black supervisors. Absolutely not. This field is something, and you'll hear that iaedp is actually the primary reason that Whitney and I got connected.
So what'd you call me about?
Oh gosh, we were talking about iaedp, but I was thinking about they were getting ready to end their where they would grandfather you in. And so my experience, I was going to be able to qualify for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was highly considering getting grandfathered into the iaedp.
You called to say that you had a Black client and you were looking for somebody at iaedp who can help you with supervision, and there was nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. This was what was wild. So I had emailed iaedp several times.
Mm-hmm.
They kept beating around the bush. And then finally, this is what is even wild. Finally, somebody connected to me to a Black person at iaedp who was a non-clinician.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that person tell me that in the international association, there was not one Black dietitian that could do supervision in the international association.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that was a good part of our conversation. And then, yes, you wanted to become a certified eating disorder specialist. And I said, how about not? Let's do something different. And how did we meet, Angela? I know you and I said, let's do a Black eating disorder dietitian group. Did you two connect?
Wait, Angela, how did we meet? We always talk about this.
I don't know. We can't figure it out. I mean, for the same reasons, but I honestly cannot pinpoint how we came together. I don't know. I'm sure we just all magnetically attracted in this virtual world because we needed each other. I mean, do you remember, Whitney? Do you have any thoughts?
No, because you weren't even on social media. And I had met Jessica the week Amplified Melanated Voices was launching because I had just gotten social media.
Y'all made me get social media, so I know that's not how I met you.
I met Angela at one of our first Black eating disorder dietitian groups. Mm-hmm. And we went around and did introductions, and I feel pretty strongly it was still in the 2020 iaedp has to die. Don't become a certified eating disorder dietitian with an organization that is, continually anti-fat and doesn't understand that eating disorders don't discriminate is not a good enough statement. It's not an action. And that it was inherently gatekeepy and expensive. And I was just I feel like there was at least 3 months when my message was for the eating disorder dietitians, don't do this. And Angela happened to pump, first meeting was Jessica just railing about how, people needed to divest from these systems. And I remember Angela did not say much. And Whitney and I checked in after. We were we like Angela. She seems cool. I hope she comes back. She looks scared.
Well, I remember that was the topic on the docket, which was so appropriate for me, and that I was at this place of considering for probably the 10th time in my career of potentially going through with it, because I knew the grandfathering piece was about to end. I believe that feels like the right timing of it. Mm-hmm. I was just doing full private practice for the first time. Mm-hmm. I've had a private practice for a while, but just full on private practice after my last baby, and wasn't going to go back to, work doing higher level of care work. And I was told multiple times, maybe y'all had heard this too, but insurance was going to potentially start requiring that, or maybe not paying people if they didn't have special credentials after their name and all this jazz, which has not manifested to be true, obviously, but it was this fear thought that people were saying. Mm-hmm. And so I was I have time on my hand to do all this. And honestly, I should be able to breeze through a lot of it, because at this place I was in my career and being the grandfathering, but I just could not get past the lack of diversity and the financial piece. Yeah. And then all that Jessica had to share in that meeting about why not to. I learned much more, of course. And I think Whitney was saying she was in a similar place, or other people in the room were in that group were saying, yeah, we've thought the same thing. And there's a lot of seasoned and qualified people. And for you to not be able, Whitney, to find a Black supervisor to talk about your Black client at the international level, like that is something. And so all the more reason for us to be like, hey, or I was like, hey, why don't we all do it? Why don't we be this collective group of, so that was also another angle or thought that why don't we be the first? Why don't we be these trailblazers? Why don't we do it together? Why don't we form this initiative or whatever? I was by no means ready to do it, but I was in this like place of contemplating. And yes, Jessica, you were strong no as to why that would not be a good idea. I was not scared, but I feel like I learned some things. I don't maybe remember all of them, but I feel like I hadn't been to an iaedp conference in probably a decade or something wild. So I wasn't fully interested, but you had to. That was part of the commitment. Like you had to attend every couple of years. You had to attend their conferences only, as you know. And I just wouldn't have been interested in a lot of what they had to offer. So
yeah.
It was on a plantation. They had a conference on a plantation. I remember you taught me that.
Yeah.
That was disgusting. Even after feedback that was not a good idea.
Right. That part.
Yeah.
I remember that. Oh, gosh.
And I think you had all of the numbers maybe already calculated out, Jessica. That's just like you. You had like the specific amount of money over an extended period of time. Like I knew it was expensive, but I think you had written out all of the information.
Megan Saichi was the one that put all that together because she was a certified eating disorder specialist at the time. So yeah, definitely Megan had heard what I was saying, what Whitney was saying, what other people are saying, and, you know, put together the $8,000 or however much it was to $8,400 specifically.
Wow.
Yes.
So. It's so wild. Like I think back to it now. That's why I have so much sympathy and empathy for new clinicians who don't know anything that want it, because it's like you want to break out to the field. You don't know what to do. It's so like sexy and attractive because they dress it up, you know. And then I'm like, what in the hell was I thinking? Like it's more than what I pay for a semester of tuition for my doctoral was the iaedp certificate, right? Like it's more than my like degree. Like that is what is wild to me, a semester of tuition. And then not to mention like just all of the inherent fat phobia, anti-trans, anti-blackness. And then it's like, I just can't help but think, isn't the iaedp conference in February this year? Like, aren't they still in the, like, even though the lawsuit is alleged lawsuit, or I guess it is actual lawsuit since they filed the paperwork. I mean, they're still proceeding as like business as usual.
Definitely.
It's wild to me. You're not about to sue me and I'm just carrying on with the conference like nothing is happening. There's no way.
Yeah, that's around the corner. Good point. Like
in the worst state outside of Mississippi and Tennessee that you could have a conference at, mind you.
Florida.
Yep.
Yeah. So because of all of the things that we've talked about today, I don't know how or why like Whitney was able to recruit Angela. I don't know how it worked, but all of a sudden in 2021, you all started planning a BIPOC Eating Disorder Conference because you were, you know, just available.
Because Angela is the most thorough, detailed person I've ever met in my life, and we compliment each other. And it's a skill that I don't possess because you know me. You know me, and you've known me long enough to know that it's not my gifting. And so, yeah, Angela is so good at all of those things, and I am not. So we work well together. And I think too, like, think about it. The three of us have been practicing, I mean, going on 2 decades, truly, right? How we've never been asked to be a keynote at any of the ED conferences. All of the degrees, each one of us has a master's degree, right? We are entrepreneurs, own our own business, very experienced, and have never been asked to keynote. And so when we were thinking about I was thinking about the conference, one that, I mean, and I just needed a distraction in that time of my life, but it was like, there's so many people out here who are amazing and magnificent that we just get overlooked. Our work gets stolen or we get overlooked. And it's like, we deserve to take up space. We deserve to be paid. And we deserve to share our experiences. Hence the BIPOC conference. And I think too, one of the speakers last year had been in the field for 25 years. She was one of the few dually licensed therapists and dietitians who specialize in eating disorders and had never been asked to present at an ED conference. 25 years. And she might have been the first dually licensed therapist and RD. Double masters, never been asked to speak.
And she was so grateful for the opportunity. We were like, we are blessed to be in your presence. Like, this is amazing. Like, please, we could sit here for hours and listen to you talk. Like, you have all the wisdom. We can learn from you. We need to hear more from you and people like you, because I know they exist. We are out here and we want to hear more. We not just us, but we want everyone to hear more from people like you.
That's about the conference.
So it is now an ongoing annual event. We're going into year 3, 2023, year 3 of the BIPOC conference. It happens in July of every year, mid-July, like in the teens. So the date varies a little bit, but it's usually Wednesday through Thursday. It's an entirely virtual conference. Anyone can attend. You don't have to be a dietitian. You don't have to be a person of color. In fact, we want everyone and anyone to come learn and grow together as a collective community. It's not possible to be done without sponsorship and support. So we welcome anyone who wants to give, donate their time and money. We need that to have this go on. This is not funded by our own pocket, but we want that from the community to continue to support something like this, where the platform is to highlight those with multiple marginalized identities, intersecting identities, to speak on things that relate to the field. And that's a wide variety of things. We don't have a specific topic per se. We try to even have each day be connected, very similar ideas, but it doesn't have to be that way. And you can pop in and out, whatever works for you. We don't expect people to stay all 3 days for the entire day. In fact, last year,
people who do.
And there are people who do. I was going to say it was 4 days last year. And there sure were people who stayed on the call all day times 4 days. And we appreciate that, because Whitney and I were there that whole time, and that's exhausting. But there was just so much to learn and so many amazing people to learn from. But we also offer continuing education. So dietitians, social workers, psychologists. We certainly have nurses that attend, community workers. Anyone is welcome. That's what I should say. We have a pool of boards that we do seek continuing education from. So that may change things for you. And certainly students are welcome to come. We want the next generation to already have this knowledge and information coming into the field like we did not have. So we encourage interns as well.
And I would love this to be in person next year and forever. What do you all need? 2025.
We want to be.
Okay.
We need our kids to be a little bit older. I mean, we're really busy over here. We make the conference work, but we do. Oh, the in-person is next level. So we do want to make that happen. I think to be in a space, to just see a sea of diversity in the field would be like this warm hug. It would be so amazing. And I would love for everyone to collectively show up and spend their money on a place that they genuinely learn and feel connected and feel supported and safe and heard, all of those things. And they're learning from people maybe they've never met, but highly qualified and have wonderful things.
Yeah, 2025, we're putting it out there. In-person BIPOC conference, opening with probably a HBCU step show, something like that. The Negro National Anthem will close. Those are stuff.
And the food is going to be good, and there's going to be music, and there's going to be, night events planned.
No goat cheese on fruit salad. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're not even going to have salad. We're not having salad. Salad will not be on the menu at the BIPOC in-person ED conference.
All right. Thank you both for coming on. I love and appreciate you both, and I'm so glad that we ended up getting connected.
Oh, that was so lovely. Thanks so much again to Whitney and Angela for joining me for this conversation. I adore them. Whitney alluded to a lawsuit, and next week, she and I talk with Stephen Dunn, who is currently suing iaedp. We ask him about his prior lawsuit against the National Eating Disorder Association and what he hopes to accomplish with his current lawsuit. It will be another 2-part episode. One for the conversation and another for the discussion that you all can participate in. To close out, I'm happy to share that I created a Patreon for this podcast to make it sustainable and also to compensate the friends and colleagues who make regular contributions to the success of the show, like Amy, our processed food engineer, and Whitney have done so far. To make that happen, you can sign up for the Patreon, where you'll find bonus content and announcements. You can also rate and review the show to build the possibility of us getting ads in the future. Thanks so much in advance for your support.
Just tell 3 friends tell 4 friends. You know what? Tell 5 friends about this show. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make it awkward, babies.
And this episode was hosted by me, Jessica Wilson. It's sponsored by the Legacy of Sacramento Outboard Services and my book, It's Always Been Ours. It's a production of The Body Politic and edited and mixed by Jen Jacobs.